AITA for refusing to babysit my sister's kids after she publicly called me irresponsible in front of our whole family. I 26 female. I am the younger sister to Emma 34 female, who has 3 kids, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. Emma's been a single mom for a few years now, and while I have a ton of respect for her, I feel like I've slowly and quietly become her unofficial backup parent or secondary mom. I never asked for this role, and I definitely didn't sign up for it in any formal way. It just kind of crept up on me, you know. And while I love my nieces and nephews dearly and want to be close to my sister, all of this has started to stress me out in a way I never expected. At first, it was just little things. She'd ask me to babysit once in a while, maybe on a Saturday so she could run some errands or take a bit of a break. I didn't mind. I mean, she's my sister, and she's doing the single mom thing, which I can't even begin to imagine the challenges of. So, yeah, I was happy to step up and help out. It made me feel good to be there for her, and honestly, I love spending time with the kids. I'd even bring over little arts and crafts projects, like DIY slime kits or painting sets, to keep them entertained. We'd have fun, and Emma would come back refreshed and grateful, or at least I thought she was grateful. But then things started to shift. The casual babysitting requests turned into regular ones. Emma would text me, sometimes at the last minute, asking if I could just watch the kids for a few hours. It stopped being like an ask and felt more like an expectation. She'd say things like, "Oh, you don't mind, right? I just need a break," or "Come on, they love spending time with their auntie." And slowly but surely, I found myself giving up more and more of my time to help her out. The funny thing is, I didn't even notice at first. I was so wrapped up in wanting to be a good sister, to help her during this tough time, that I didn't stop to think about what I was giving up. My friends would text me, inviting me out for a drink or to go see a movie, and I'd catch myself saying, "Oh, I can't. I'm watching the kids." I thought I was being a good family member, that I was stepping up in the way family is supposed to. But after months of this, it started to feel less like helping and more like I was being taken for granted. There was this one Friday night, for instance, where she called me, saying she just needed to get out of the house. I'd had a long week at work, and I was so looking forward to just chilling out with some Netflix and wine, but instead, I found myself with 3 little kids running around my apartment. Emma didn't come back until close to midnight, and I was exhausted. She didn't even thank me. She just picked up the kids, said "see you later," and left. That night felt like a turning point for me, but I still didn't speak up. I told myself that she was just going through a rough time and that things would get easier. I kept thinking, she's my sister. She'd do the same for me if the tables were turned. But as time went on, things only got worse. She started calling me at all hours, sometimes asking me to pick up the kids from daycare or school when she couldn't make it. She'd send me texts in the middle of the day asking if I could come over after work to help with bedtime. It was no longer just about helping her out once in a while. I was fully in secondary parent mode, without ever being asked if that was okay. Then, last weekend, I finally had something planned that I was genuinely excited about, something that wasn't centered around anyone else's needs but mine. A close friend of mine was celebrating her birthday, and we'd been talking about this night for weeks, planning every little detail together. It was going to be an epic girls' night out dinner at this amazing, trendy restaurant we'd wanted to try for ages, followed by karaoke, drinks, and dancing. We were all pumped, and I'd been looking forward to this evening like it was a holiday. This was one of those rare nights where I could dress up, relax, and just be myself, a 26-year-old with a life and friends, without any responsibilities hanging over me. I'd gone all out, even buying a new dress just for the occasion. I'd spent way too much time obsessing over finding the perfect heels to match, searching my closet for just the right accessories, and even treating myself to a little salon trip that morning for a blowout. I don't remember the last time I had something like this to look forward to, something that was purely about having fun and unwinding. I had been counting down the days, texting back and forth with my friends, talking about what we'd order, which songs we'd sing at karaoke, and how we'd just let loose and enjoy ourselves. I was practically giddy with excitement, and it felt like a light at the end of a long, tiring tunnel. But just as I was starting to get ready, around mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Emma. she sent me this quick, casual text. "Hey, can you watch the kids for a few hours? I just need some time to recharge." It was one of those moments where your heart sinks, even if you're not fully sure why. I reread her message, feeling a mix of emotions bubbling up. I could sense there was this expectation beneath her words, this subtle assumption that I'd be available just because I always had been. It wasn't even a real request, it felt more like a casual statement, as if she just assumed I'd be there to swoop in and help her out, no matter what. I sat there staring at my phone, torn between frustration and guilt. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to say yes and keep the peace. It was practically a reflex at this point. I'd become so conditioned to drop my plans, rearrange my schedule, and put her needs above mine without a second thought. But then, this other part of me, the tired, frustrated part that had been craving a night like this, was screaming, "No. You deserve this." I was so tired of constantly sacrificing my time, my plans, and my life for her. I'd been looking forward to this night for weeks. Why should I give it up? I felt my stomach twisting with guilt, but this time, I finally decided to stand up for myself. I took a deep breath, typed out a message, then deleted it, typed another, then deleted that too. Finally, after what felt like forever, I settled on something simple and straightforward. "Sorry, I can't tonight. I have plans." I sent it off before I could second-guess myself again, my heart pounding as I watched the message go through. I waited, hoping for some kind of understanding or at least an acknowledgement that I deserved this one night to myself. But instead, her response was short, almost dismissive. "Fine, that's it. Just fine. No follow-up, no I'll figure something else out, no understanding whatsoever." It was like she'd thrown my plans aside with one word, as if they didn't matter at all. The party was amazing. I had the best time, laughing and dancing with my friends, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was living for myself. I didn't have to worry about whether Emma needed something or if the kids were okay. It was just me and my friends, celebrating and having fun. But then, the next day, we had a big family dinner, one of those extended family gatherings that's both cozy and slightly chaotic. You know, with everyone crammed around the table, aunts and uncles catching up, cousins running around, the whole bit. It was the kind of event where the food is piled high, and people are laughing, passing dishes, talking over each other, filling the house with that comforting hum of family. I was actually feeling good when I walked in, still holding onto the warmth and happiness from the night before. I thought it would be a relaxed, nice evening. But then, out of nowhere, Emma drops a bomb. We're all sitting around the table when she turns to the whole family and, with this tone of exasperation, says, "I just don't get how irresponsible some people can be." My stomach dropped instantly. I knew she was talking about me, but I was caught completely off guard. It was like being slapped in the face without warning. I looked around, hoping someone else would respond, but everyone just went quiet, eyes flicking between Emma and me, and I could feel the flush of heat starting in my cheeks. Then, she goes on this tirade. She starts saying how she sacrificed everything for her kids, giving up her social life, her dreams, and even her mental health, while I'm off partying like a teenager. She didn't hold back, either. She was full-on ranting, saying I was self-centered, that I had no idea what it's like to be a real adult because I don't have kids of my own, and therefore, I couldn't possibly understand her life. Every word cut deeper, especially because she was airing this in front of everyone, with no regard for how humiliating this was for me. I felt my face getting hotter, and I could feel every pair of eyes on me, watching, waiting to see how I would respond. I wanted to say something, anything, to defend myself. But I was so shocked and hurt that I couldn't even find the words. It was as if my voice had been stolen. I just sat there, feeling my face turn redder by the second, feeling utterly exposed and small, while she painted this awful picture of me, as if I was some selfish, immature kid who didn't care about anyone but herself. It wasn't even the words themselves that hurt the most, but the way she was saying them, as if she'd been harboring these feelings for ages and was just waiting for a chance to throw them at me, as if she genuinely believed that my entire existence revolved around parting while she suffered. The way she talked made me feel like all the times I'd shown up for her, sacrificed my plans, canceled on my friends, and watched her kids over and over didn't mean anything. All that seemed to matter was this one time I'd said no. And the worst part, not a single person came to my defense. They just sat there, nodding along, or avoiding my eyes, as if they all agreed that I was somehow in the wrong for having my own life. Nobody acknowledged the months, maybe even years, that I'd been putting my life on hold to help Emma out. My mom even chimed in at one point, leaning across the table to say, "Your sister's stressed. You need to be there for her." It was like every sacrifice I'd made for Emma was invisible to them. All anyone could see was this one night where I hadn't been there, and suddenly, in their eyes, I was the selfish one. I felt like a stranger in my own family, as if they couldn't see the person I actually was, someone who had been there, who had cared, who had shown up over and over, often without even being asked. I tried to keep my composure through the rest of the dinner, but every bite tasted like ash, and every laugh around the table just reminded me that I was on my own in this. I'd never felt so betrayed, so unseen by the very people I'd thought would support me no matter what. By the time dinner ended, I knew I needed to say something to Emma. I couldn't just let this pass without standing up for myself. So, after everyone had finished and the dishes were being cleared, I pulled her aside and, with my heart pounding, told her I was done babysitting until she apologized. I told her that I couldn't keep sacrificing my plans, my life, and my sanity just to be there for her every time she needed a break. I said that I deserved to be treated with respect, that I wasn't her backup parent, and that I had my own life to live. The look on her face was a mix of shock and anger. She stared at me as if she couldn't believe what I was saying, like my words were some kind of personal betrayal. And then, with this look of cold disappointment, she said, "So, you're just going to abandon me now? Families should be there for each other, no matter what." Her words hit me like a tidal wave of guilt, and for a moment, I almost caved. I could feel this huge weight pressing down on my chest, as if I was the one failing her, letting her down when she needed me most. But at the same time, there was this other part of me, a smaller voice, that kept reminding me that I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep living my life for her, bending over backward, sacrificing my own happiness and peace, just to meet her every need. So I just nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, and walked away, feeling torn between the love I had for my family and the undeniable knowledge that I couldn't keep living like this. Since then, things have been tense. Emma's barely spoken to me, and when she does, it's only to guilt-trip me, saying things like, "It must be nice to have the freedom to just walk away." My mom keeps telling me I need to let it go and be there for Emma, but I feel like nobody's even trying to see my side of things. I've spent so much time putting her needs above mine, and the one time I say no, suddenly, I'm the selfish one. It's been a painful realization, but I'm starting to see that I need to hold firm on this boundary. I can't keep sacrificing myself for someone who only seems to care about me when it's convenient for her. It's hard, and part of me still feels guilty, but I'm finally starting to realize that my own life and happiness matter, too. No apology from Emma yet, but I'm staying strong. Update. A few days passed after the dinner, and I'd been trying to keep a low profile, giving myself space to let the hurt and frustration settle. I could still feel the sting of Emma's public takedown at the family dinner, and the embarrassment, the betrayal, was raw. But I'd made a promise to myself, no matter how guilty I felt, I wasn't going to let her trample over my life anymore. I'd been strong in telling her that I wouldn't babysit again until she could show me respect, and I was determined to hold firm. I'd gone over it in my head 100 times, reassuring myself that this was the right call, that setting boundaries was healthy. I reminded myself that I deserved a life outside of my role as auntie on demand. Then, that Friday evening, I got a call from Emma. I wasn't expecting it, but seeing her name light up my screen sent an immediate wave of dread through me. My stomach dropped, and for a split second, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But I'd spent so many years being there for her, answering every call, listening to every complaint, and helping at the drop of a hat, that I automatically swiped the pickup. I was still reeling from our last conversation and the family dinner blow-up, still processing all of the complicated emotions that came with standing my ground. But as soon as I answered, I realized Emma wasn't calling to apologize or even to acknowledge what had happened. She sounded almost cheerful, casual, like nothing between us had changed. Her voice was light, upbeat, and utterly oblivious to the strain she'd put on me. Without any hesitation, any concern, she launched straight into why she was calling. There was no how are you or I know things were tense at dinner, not even the smallest recognition of the boundary I'd put up. Instead, she told me she had plans for the evening. Apparently, a friend was coming over, and they were going to have a special night. She went on and on about how she'd been looking forward to this evening, how it was exactly what she needed, how things had been so stressful, and this was her perfect opportunity to unwind. As she went on, I realized with growing frustration that she hadn't even stopped to consider that I might have plans or that I might not be in a position to help her tonight or that I'd just told her I wouldn't be available to babysit for the foreseeable future. It was as if everything I'd said in our last conversation had vanished into thin air. She was acting like I was obligated to be there, that I'd simply fall back into my old role without question. The way she spoke, breezy and matter-of-fact, rubbed me the wrong way. My grip tightened on the phone as she casually mentioned that I should swing by and pick up the kids or, better yet, that she'd just drop them off. I sat there, gripping the phone, feeling an overwhelming sense of frustration at how easily she dismissed my attempts to create boundaries. It was like I was invisible. My needs, my life, my plans didn't seem to matter at all. Taking a deep breath, I reminded her as calmly as I could that I'd told her I wasn't available to look after the kids until she could respect my boundaries. I tried to stay calm, though I could feel my heart racing with the mix of anger, sadness, and exhaustion building inside me. I was forcing myself to stay strong because I knew if I didn't, I'd be back to square one, right where I'd been all along, being taken for granted and dismissed. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't about me not caring or being selfish. It was about respect. I'd done my part, more than my part, in helping her as a sister, but I couldn't keep bending over backward at her convenience. I told her that I was serious, that my boundaries mattered, and that if she wanted my help, she needed to treat me with respect. There was a pause, a silence on the other end of the line that stretched just a little too long, heavy and cold. But instead of acknowledging what I'd said, or even taking a moment to understand my side, she launched into an argument I'd heard 100 times before. Emma started talking about family duty and how, as their aunt, I had an obligation to help. Her voice took on that familiar tone she used whenever she was trying to guilt-trip me, saying things like, "You don't understand what I sacrifice and these are your niece and nephews." She framed it as if I was turning my back on family, failing some essential duty because I wanted time to live my own life. And the way she talked about it, it was like she fully believed that my role in her life was to be there whenever she needed. No questions asked. It was infuriating. Each word was like a weight pressing down on me, the expectation and obligation thickening the air between us. I listened as she kept throwing around phrases like family responsibility and making sacrifices for each other. She spoke as if her needs were all that mattered, as if the years of me being there at the drop of a hat, sacrificing my time, my plans, and my own life, counted for nothing. It was exhausting, this feeling that no matter what I did, it would never be enough for her. I wanted to scream that I'd been sacrificing my time all along, that I'd canceled my own plans more times than I could count, that I'd been bending over backward for her for years without asking for anything in return. But she couldn't see that, couldn't recognize my exhaustion or my need for space. Instead, I took a deep breath and told her, in the calmest voice I could manage, that her children weren't my responsibility, they were hers. I reminded her that while I loved my niece and nephews, I wasn't responsible for rearranging my life around her last-minute requests. My heart was racing as I said it, feeling a strange mixture of relief and dread. I hoped, deep down, that this time she'd finally hear me, that she'd understand that my boundaries weren't negotiable, that they were real and that they mattered. For a moment, there was this tense, loaded silence. I could almost hear her fuming on the other end, the silence between us sharp and icy. And then, without a single word, she hung up. I sat there for a minute, taking in what had just happened. I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion, thinking she might finally understand that I wasn't available at her beck and call. I felt the tension release in my shoulders, thinking maybe this time my words had actually gotten through to her. But about half an hour later, I got a text notification. My stomach dropped as I saw her name pop up, and I opened the message with a sinking feeling. All it said was, "The kids are on their way to your place. I'll pick them up late tonight." My heart started pounding as I realized what she'd done. She hadn't asked, hadn't respected my boundary, hadn't even waited for a response. She'd just decided that, regardless of what I wanted or said, I was going to be watching her kids that night. I felt this wave of disbelief wash over me. Who does that? Who just drops their kids on someone's doorstep after being told no? I was equal parts angry, hurt, and completely blindsided. I rushed to the door, hoping that maybe she was bluffing, maybe she hadn't really left them there. But as soon as I opened it, I saw her 3 kids standing there, looking up at me with innocent, expectant faces, clutching their little overnight bags. They had no idea about the fight between their mom and me. All they saw was their aunt, someone they trusted, someone who they thought would always welcome them. My anger and frustration simmered as I took in their faces. I couldn't turn them away. They were kids, after all, and this wasn't their fault. But inside, I felt this growing resentment and helplessness as I realized that once again, Emma had gotten her way, trampling over my boundaries without a second thought. So, I took them in. We had a quiet night, doing our usual things, coloring, playing games, reading bedtime stories. I tried to keep my frustration at bay, but it was hard not to feel like every moment was another reminder of Emma's disregard for me. I was angry, but I did my best to hide it from the kids. I went through the motions, my mind racing the whole time, replaying the conversation I'd had with Emma, feeling the sting of how she'd ignored everything I'd said. It was like she thought my boundaries didn't matter, like she could bulldoze right over them and I'd just keep letting her. Finally, late at night, well past the kids' bedtime, I heard a knock on my door. It was Emma, standing there with barely a glance in my direction as she stepped inside, calling for the kids to gather their things. She didn't say thank you, didn't even acknowledge the fact that she'd just dumped her kids on me after I'd explicitly told her no. As she ushered them out the door, she turned to me with this casual, almost dismissive tone, saying, "Make sure you're ready next time. It shouldn't be such a big deal for you to look after them." And with that, she left, not even giving me a chance to respond. The door closed, and I stood there in shock, feeling the full weight of her words sink in. Emma had no intention of respecting my boundaries. She'd made it clear that, in her eyes, I was simply there to serve her needs whenever she deemed it necessary. I felt this crushing sense of defeat and exhaustion, knowing that my words hadn't meant anything to her, that she'd continued to use me as her backup parent without even a hint of gratitude. I'd been completely disregarded, my feelings brushed aside as if they were meaningless. I knew I had to be firm this time, stronger than I'd ever been. But as I stood there, replaying her words in my head, I felt a deep sadness settle in, a realization that my sister didn't see me as an individual with my own life. She saw me as a tool, someone to be used whenever she needed and discarded without a second thought. This time, though, I was determined. I wouldn't let her walk all over me again.